Hi, Labyrinth Walker here. So, what you're about to see is part one, and I don't know how many parts yet because I haven't finished watching the interview. But this will be part one of a multi part commentary on the Jon Schaffer Finally Free interview that dropped yesterday. I am watching it, I've seen a couple of snippets, but I am watching it for the first time in real time and giving my knee-jerk reaction to it. So I try not to deal with politics too much on this channel, but this is inevitably going to go there. Every now and then I drop a political video and it doesn't do squat. You guys want music? I figured this is the best of both worlds. Iced Earth being one of my favorite power metal bands of all time. I just honestly, with my interest in January 6th and the quote-unquote insurrection and just everything that has gone on in the last 4 or 5 years, I wanted to give my hot take on this. So if you stick around for it, great. This is part one of I don't know how many. Thanks for joining me. Let's get to it.
All right. You good?
Yep, it's all good.
Okay. John, thanks for doing this. I know we've talked about it for
Months and months.
I was going to say it's probably been longer than that.
Yeah.
I know we talked about it about a year ago.
Right, at least, yeah.
But I know your story. I know there's parts of your story I haven't heard before. I know part of doing this was just to sit down and talk and let you tell your story from wherever you want to start to all the details of what you want everybody to know.
Wow.
Yeah, just start off with everything, right?
Where to start?
Let's start with, I guess, a little bit of background on where are you from, when did you start your first band, and then go from there.
Is this necessary?
Well, I was born in Franklin, right down the road.
Okay.
March 15th, 1968. And lived in a little town called Edinburgh until I was 3 years old. That's when my parents got divorced, and we ended up in Greenwood and Indy and then Fort Wayne eventually. So I pretty much consider Fort Wayne my hometown. And yeah, and then I left as a teenager to Tampa and started the band. And
16, right?
Yeah. The first band was called The Rose, and I think I didn't really put an official start date.
Who all was in
Big
that?
Bette Midler fan.
I've always
high
meant to
school
ask you, but
buddies.
just high school
Like,
buddies.
yeah, like it was really short-lived total beginner stuff. You know?
And that was in Tampa?
No, it was in Fort Wayne.
Oh, in Fort Wayne, okay.
Yeah, and then
Did you play any
we
gigs?
changed. No, just basement and garage stuff.
Okay.
You know? Yeah.
Have any original songs as Rose?
I don't think so. I don't think anything survived from that long ago.
Okay.
But then, that was short-lived, and I changed the name to Purgatory, and that, I remember setting the official start date as January 20th, 1985.
Okay.
So, and it stayed that until, I guess we changed the name to Iced Earth in 88.
Okay.
So, yeah, it wasn't
That was in Tampa, though, right?
when it
At
changed
that
to
point,
Iced Earth,
okay.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, and so then, we started, Purgatory evolved into that. So some of the members of Purgatory were in Iced Earth for a while on the first album. One, my very dear friend Gene, he was the singer in Purgatory, and then on the first Iced Earth album.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got to meet him and when he visited our church. And so
He didn't know that. So I guess this guy knows John, but doesn't know Iced Earth because he doesn't realize that Gene Adams sang in Purgatory, and then on the first Iced Earth album, which is that's so weird. I don't know who this cat is, to be honest. Obviously, he knows John. I don't really. John's told this story a lot, so the bio seems unnecessary because that's not really why we're here. But anyway,
that evolved, and there's been there's been a lot of different players, a lot of different talent through the years in the band. So,
all right. So I guess just a little bit of, I wouldn't mind getting into a little bit of Iced Earth history as far as when did it become a full-time gig for you?
That was around 95 or 96. So we were already on album 4.
Okay.
Yeah. And in between tours, I did a lot of different jobs. So there was...
You were a roofer for a while, weren't
yeah,
you?
that was when it really started. And we would use the roofing shop to rehearse in, Greg and I, because when we split, we didn't have a band, and he didn't even have a drum set, but he was going to be the drummer.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So, but he put one in layaway and eventually got it, and our boss let us practice in the roofing shop. So we'd go out in the scorching Florida sun all day and do hot mop roofing, and then go home and shower and go back to the roofing shop and jam. And
where'd you start touring?
We did gigs obviously in the Tampa area every now and then, not too often. We spent a lot of time woodshedding. We practiced a lot.
Okay.
6 nights a week usually.
Oh wow.
So
okay.
we were even with everybody having full-time jobs, we just put a lot of effort into that. And doing gigs back then, most people were playing cover tunes if you wanted to get into that, and that I never had any interest in that.
Yep.
And neither did the other guys. They weren't. We were focused on a bigger mission, and I just felt like if you start doing that, you're going to get stuck in that trap, and then you might be able to play a couple of your originals, but then you start relying on the income from being a bar band, and then you're like, so that was never interesting at all for me. And I didn't have any desire to play other people's music, so not for a minute. Actually, one of the most difficult albums in my career was Tribute to the Gods, which was an album of cover tunes, and that was tough.
Then why do it?
To learn other people's stuff. And
then why do it?
To do it and try to do it justice, because as much as I loved those bands growing up and everything, it was, foreign to me to play somebody else's music. So
with that,
not a fan of Tribute to the Gods. Just throwing that out there.
When did you start? Have you always been interested in writing music, or when did you start writing music for the band?
Oh my God.
Or just in general?
Well, I started pretty much right away. I mean, as soon as I could, feel my way around a fretboard, the ideas started coming. So I started off learning, Smoke on the Water or a Black Sabbath riff or something like that, like everybody. But as soon as I started getting more comfortable, the ideas started coming. And before that, I was writing a lot of poetry that would end up, becoming lyrics. And so my teacher, especially in, what grade was that? She was my 10th grade English teacher, was really impressed with my lyrics and stuff, and she would put them up in the classroom. She was a big supporter. She just, she could feel that there was something going on. We actually stayed in contact too.
Oh, really?
All the years, yeah.
Oh, that's
she
cool.
passed away. Her nephew came to tell me that when we were on tour, and I think we were playing in Seattle, and he came to the show to tell me. It was probably about 10 years ago now. But,
well.
But anyway, I mean, her name was Darlene Butler, and she was a big supporter. She knew I had a rough childhood, and she was kind of, I guess somehow, there's people that come in your life like that, and they give you support, give you encouraging words when you need it.
Back to the songwriting, just because I'm curious. Do you typically usually start with the music and then the lyrics, or do you have lyrics and then set music to it, or?
So the process changed as I became a better writer, but like in the early days, it started with lyrics, but it doesn't now, or in the last, let's say, 25 years or longer probably. It would start with a theme of a song or a title, and sometimes it would just be a title like A Shot, and I would end up changing it, but it would, at least I'd have an idea of what the framework of the song was going to be, and that would be the direction that I would try to build the soundtrack to whatever that theme was. And then during the process, I would start building, whether it's on a bass guitar or on a guitar, acoustic, whatever, even a keyboard. Sometimes I've been messing around with a keyboard and the part comes and I'll start developing the idea, and then eventually the melody, the vocal melody would always be the last thing because I've got the musical arrangement, and then the melody is, that kind of dictates. I mean, you have a million possibilities of what it could be, but that lays the groundwork for it. And so once you get that melody down and the cadence of the melody, then you can start honing in. And during the process, I'll write lines down that I feel like are hooks or whatever. But I always, whenever I'm in writing and in the control room and in that mode, I always have a thesaurus, because sometimes you need to find the right word that has the right amount of syllables, and there's always a way to say what you're trying to say so that it's singable with what's going on up here. So that mostly I would say themes or titles is the first thing that I would shoot for, especially when I really started getting that way, when we went from just being a band and jamming and working through ideas to having a studio at home and having a Pro Tools rig and doing the process that way. Like when the band started living in different states or different countries, that changed everything. So, then it would be a point where the theme of the song, it's been a big deal all along, really, because with the exception of the first album, and oddly enough, the last album, I think almost every one of the albums has been a theme album or a concept album. Now, Burnt Offerings wasn't either, actually. That was a collection of songs, but the majority of this stuff has been, when it comes to Iced Earth anyway, has been concept or at least themed based albums.
What prompted the themes?
I have no idea.
It was just a story that you wanted to tell, or is it okay?
It just depends on which era we're talking about. I just always had these ideas. I don't know. I mean, I feel like it was without me knowing God was working through me. I know I can see that now, and even in the dark stuff, it's been a crazy journey, man. So when I look back at some of these things, it's just hard you can't make it up. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I want to progress to that. A little bit more band history. When did you guys first start touring internationally?
So I went over there on the promo tour for the first album in...
Where's over there?
Oh, Europe.
Okay. No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I just know you've been everywhere, so I had to ask.
Well, and I've been a lot of places, played in over 100 countries, and many of them many, many times. Spent a lot of my life in Europe, actually, but around the world, but definitely Europe was because we would tour there, and then you always had the big European festivals that we've been doing for years and years. So,
not for nothing, Jon is 3 or 4 years older than I am. This is the most dad conversation I have ever been a witness to. I have friends who are around my age. We hang out and stuff, and the last thing we have are dad conversations. This is a guy who is in one of the best metal bands, at least in my opinion, of the last 30 years. Power metal, heavy metal, absolutely a juggernaut that Iced Earth was. And a friend of mine on Facebook, Samuel, he put it perfectly. This may change, but he put it perfectly that Southern Baptist preacher is Jon's final form. And that's exactly what this feels like. I hated church when I was a kid. I can't imagine having to deal with it now, but this is like two guys in fellowship. I'll try to be less of a dick about it, and I'll either, I don't know. We'll continue on. Forgive my interruption.
But I went over there right after the Berlin Wall came down, so they were still chipping away at that. And my first trip to Berlin, so that was before the first album was actually released, and I think the first album came out in several months. Back then it wasn't a global simultaneous release. You would have releases in, like Europe, and then the US and Japan would be they'd all have a different timeline, but once everything started to become more global, then they could do a coordinated release a lot easier. But that was probably 10 years into my career after the first album before that started happening. But so the band, the first tour was in early '91. Yeah.
First 91. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
we supported.
Wow.
We were
Pretty
supporting.
quick after going full time.
It was. Yeah,
It seems quick to me,
so
and I guess
it was
it
4
seems
or
like a
5
while.
years after.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was a lot of years of grinding it out too.
Yeah.
In the, in the really hardcore days, the very beginning. That was tough. So, yeah.
So I know you have other projects and other bands and stuff. When did, I guess, what was the first side project or other
Demons and
bands?
Wizards.
Demons and Wizards.
Yeah, yeah, that was the first, and we were support for Blind Guardian on tour in '91, and we became fast friends and lots of partying, lots of crazy, typical heavy metal stuff. We lived on a bus together and traveling all over, and there was just a really great bond that was built. And some years later, I was trying to remember when that first album came out. I think it was 99 or 2000. I don't know. But a couple years before that, I was probably doing promotion in Europe, because whenever you do an album, you do a promo tour first and go out and do all the interviews and all that stuff. And so I feel like that's what I was doing. I was in Germany, and I ended up staying at Hansi's house, and we probably drank way too many beers the night before. And I remember waking up on his couch and seeing an acoustic guitar, and I started playing, and he starts humming a melody, and we're looking at each other. So we just went over to the Blind Guardian studio, and we cranked out a song relatively quickly within, whatever, 5, 6, 7 hours, whatever.
Oh wow!
It was.
Like just in a sitting.
Yep.
Fiddler of the
And,
Green. Fiddler on the Green.
And that ended up, I'm pretty sure that was My Last Sunrise, which was
My Last Sunrise. Nice.
might have been the last song on the first album.
Good.
And we had
song.
considered a couple options of either making it an Iced Earth version and the Blind Guardian version, and then, I started thinking we're creating this new energy that really captures a big part of both bands and marries it. And so I talked to Hansi and I said, let's just do a full album, let's go for it. And so we did, and it was a really big success. But between the schedules of both bands, there was always a lot of years between those records. So.
Yeah, because they're both side projects for both of you, I guess.
Yeah, and we both stayed very busy.
In
So
different continents, I'm sure that probably didn't help things.
Yeah, it got easier as time went on with technology. But back when we first started, I mean, I've still got the 2-inch reels. The first Demons and Wizards album was all analog, the whole thing. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
So, what was the next side project that then came out?
So I guess Sons of Liberty.
Was it next?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that was.
Is that before Schaffer Barlow?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
just did that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
That was right before. That was I think we were recording in the summer of 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Did this guy listen to Iced Earth? I mean, I know I'll talk. Stop. It's like he doesn't know anything about the band, and my guess is he knows this cat from church because John got really into church after his time in federal prison. Because this guy didn't seem to know a whole lot. I don't know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
That was right before. That was I think we were recording in the summer of 2020.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So right at the height of COVID, I produced a band called Witherfall that did their album, and that was, I think, it was really peaking right around then. So the COVID nonsense. So
Yeah.
we were it was probably April, May, something like that. I can't really recall, but we did that first, and then Matt and I had talked some years prior to the Schaffer Barlow project about doing some Christmas stuff, and we did it, and it's cool, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do some more of that.
That'd be awesome.
Someday.
Oh, nice.
I want to go back and talk about Sons of Liberty. So, obviously, Sons of Liberty, that one's, talk about theme albums. Sons of Liberty is a theme in and of itself as a band.
Yeah.
So I know you're a big reader, and I know you read read a lot on tour. So I'm assuming, and just from talking to you in the past, I know that had some contribution to, I guess.
Looks like we got ourselves a reader.
Band? Is that, or at least get the message out, or?
Yeah, that's a pretty wild story about that. But yeah, I mean, I'm going to be 57 here soon, and growing up in 1976, you know, that for the bicentennial was a big deal, and you know, my dad was a big history guy, so he had an influence on me with a lot of that stuff. But as soon as I was old enough to read, I was just like inhaling books. I mean, my mom took me to the library 2 or 3 times a week when I was a kid, and every chance I got. And so there's always just been some really strong connection. You know, I painted my room red, white, and blue when I was a kid, and I was just fully down with it. And so learning the things I learned and thinking about things, studying history and reading other books later led to what I call the first step of my awakening process. And I think that it was there, but that was like an explosion. And it sort of happened because I finally got off I worked all the time, and I hadn't taken a vacation in 8 or 10 years at that point. And my wife at the time and I and our daughter, we went to the Caribbean, and we went to an island there and didn't do anything but just dive and relax for a month. And it was because I was really like about ready to crash and burn. I could feel it coming. I was just exhausted. And so, she was really encouraging me to do that. And of course, I made it difficult by taking every diving course I could. But anyway, that's another story.
So Jon Schaffer doesn't go into something lightly.
Yeah. But it was
just I was around 6 years old when in 1976 the bicentennial, and it was such a celebration because, I mean, the United States it was like you're still proud to be an American. It was definitely American propaganda, but in like a good way. Like the American flags were everywhere. I lived in the South, and I remember going to this giant Coliseum, and they had these replicas, and we couldn't have the actual Constitution, so we had a replica of the Constitution, and talking about John Adams and George Washington and Ben Franklin, and it really dominated the school pre-1976. I never really thought about it that much, but 76 and really on through the 80s, but 76 was almost like retaking what it is to be an American citizen, a patriot, loving America. Because, I mean, if you think about it, 76, we are less than 10 years removed from the Manson murders and hippies hating the United States and draft dodgers and burning the American flag and first wave feminism, like everything that was kind of antithetical to traditional American values. And it was like 76 was like 1976, the bicentennial was like replanting the seed that would grow up into who we were in honestly the 1980s and 90s, when race relations were getting better and better and better, and you're proud to be an American, and you love talking, you love people want to come to the United States. And not because of like, the government's handing out cell phones and money and stuff, but because there was a promise that you could come here as nothing and become something incredible. So that all kind of revamped back in 76. So I know what John's saying there. And I guess for any of us who kind of grew up in that time where it can make an impression on you, it it instilled in you a fervent sort of patriotism that even when you question it, even when you question your government, you question where your country's going, the American ideal is a huge part of you. So yeah, that I totally get. So just I want to talk about that for a second.
So Jon Schaffer doesn't go into something lightly.
Yeah. But it was somehow being away from the rat race of the music business. Also, I think the media and all of the bombardment of everything around us, you know, that we kind of get conditioned in that way. Whether it's turning on the radio and hearing all these ridiculous commercials, billboards everywhere. It's like it's just in the TV commercials and all that stuff. And when I got out of that, because we didn't have any of that, and I didn't take my laptop, and I told my manager at the time, I don't want to hear from you unless somebody dies. I don't want to hear anything. I don't care what's going on. Just here's the number of the resort if you need me, but it's got to be very serious.
Yeah.
You know. So it just seemed like I started getting into a different headspace, and when I got back from that is when I got back to the States from that trip is when the dots started to connect. And so the result of I can only say it was a part. I didn't get it all then, but the spiritual awakening, I mean, it was heavy. It was like I saw, in hindsight, what I was seeing was true evil, but I wasn't ready for that yet.
Yep.
I just saw like everything that we've been told mostly is a lie, and that we've been captured, and there's some very dark forces running things. And so I felt the need to, like, you know, the moment was a spiritual moment. There's no doubt about that, because it's hard to put into words, but I couldn't. I remember hitting my knees. We lived in Brown County at the time, and I was crying, but I also felt like this enormous weight come off, like I could see. And then my wife comes in the door, and she thought that somebody died, you know, like she could tell I was, like, as the kids say, shook.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, really shook. And
As the kids say, don't do that. Don't do that. Again, the most dad conversation. As the kids say, you know, I was shook.
But I tried to explain it to her, and I just had to end up, the only thing that I could do was I had to go to my studio. And so I went to my studio, and then it just started to happen, all the Sons of Liberty stuff. And so I did that. In a very short amount of time, I knew that the information was crucial enough that I didn't care about making any money on it. I wanted to get it out there. You know, in my mind, it was like the soundtrack of the revolution, and I wanted people to copy it, and they did globally, like all over the place. It did have an effect, and but it took some work to get there. And so I didn't, you know, we programmed the drums because that's an expensive part of production, and I knew I was going to be, you know, giving it away for free.
Yeah.
Through downloads. We did do a digital download, higher quality that you could pay for, and then eventually the label ended up signing it, and they did a limited run of CDs and stuff. But that's not what it started out as, and it was. I went to Texas and went on Alex Jones' show and re-released it that day while I was on the air. We put it out there. And
was it the re-release after the CDs, or?
It was just released as a download then.
Oh, okay.
So everybody could get free MP3 files, and then there was a higher quality, you know, full fidelity audio that was like $7 or $8 or something like that.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it spread, and people started making homemade videos and things, exposing what it was I was talking about lyrically, and they were putting all this stuff together on videos. Most of that stuff was wiped after the J6 deal. So really even started before that. I started getting censored before that. But but the fans at the time that were really into it, they made some super cool videos, and hopefully we'll see them emerge again someday if we move towards freedom.
Going back to that whole, I think you called it an awakening. I know you've always, like you said, you've always read, you've always been a big reader, you've always been interested in history, very patriotic. What was it that, was there anything at the time that you're reading in particular, or was there something that you learned that made you want to start Sons of Liberty, or was it just an overall like lifetime of stuff and you're like, I gotta do something about this? Or what were those things that were upsetting you?
It was the Creature from Jekyll Island and
G. Edward Griffin.
Yeah, G. Edward Griffin, a very important book, and that one triggered me to read a lot of other very important books. But there was a film documentary called America, Freedom to Fascism.
Okay. Yep.
And that, it all started hitting like at the same time, but it was really odd because it was after that trip to the island, and I was just able to see things more clearly. I think it's the frequency pollution that we're hit with, and there's many levels of that.
Yep.
It keeps us distracted.
Yep.
Big time.
Fluoridated water, frequency, I agree.
Yeah. We're under attack. So
probably a combination of, just thinking here, probably a combination of that, and then as well as being able to relax because you're not on tour, and be able to kind of digest everything that you've been reading, and then
get plenty of sunshine.
Yeah.
It was the time, I think, for that step, and so of course I got called a right-wing extremist and conspiracy theorist and all the other stuff that they say, and but
what was the first song that you wrote for the album?
I don't remember. I don't know. Oh, I do. It was Our Dying Republic.
Oh, really? Okay.
Republic. That was the first one.
Okay.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah. That was it. Yeah. There's some memory issues. They're coming back, but I'm doing
Most
NAD
definitely.
plus IV. But ever since the end of the solitary confinement and the bright lights and all that stuff from the trauma, it's definitely messed with some things.
Memory stuff. Yeah.
You can definitely tell that time has humbled him. If you look at, as we get older, we tend to chill out, we tend to calm down a little bit, but you can tell that no matter what he says going forward, and I will listen and I'll take him at his word, but his spirit seems to be broken, to be honest. It just seems to be broken. The Jon Schaffer pre-January 6th, and even on January 6th, there was this confidence, there was this self-assuredness, and the federal government definitely broke him of that. But that's to say, you can see other people who were imprisoned longer than Jon, who were really honestly reinvigorated. Like, they came out more pissed off, which is honestly what I thought would happen to Jon. Like, Jon would come out and be more pissed off. But there are people who are confident because they haven't met the true stress, true trauma. And I know Jon's been through, he lost a friend, he's written songs about him. I don't know everything about Jon. But there are people who go through trauma who come out broken. who come out victims. And then there are people who go through trauma and they come out stronger. That sort of Nietzschean idea of what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And it seems for Jon, it did not have a Nietzschean effect. It's not judging the man, it's just, it just seems that's what the case is, that it quieted him, that it humbled him. I said it to a friend of mine. The iced earth that we've known up through incorruptible is dead.